Number 1. The Sentinel Effect. An old woman sits awake at the edge of a dying fire hours before dawn while every other body in the camp lies still under hides. She is not on guard. No one asked her to watch. Her eyes are simply open, the last coal glowing against her face, and because they are open, the camp is not asleep. This small, ordinary scene is one of the deepest reasons a stalking predator so rarely found its moment. Think about what an ambush hunter actually needs. It needs a window when its prey is unaware, unmoving, and undefended. A lion, a hyena, a leopard does not fight a fair fight. It waits for the gap, and in a human camp, that gap almost never opened. Someone was always awake. This is not a guess. Anthropologists David Sampson and Charlie Nunn gave it a name, the Sentinel Hypothesis, and then they went and measured it. In 2017, they published a study in the journal Proceedings of the Royal Society B, working with the Hadza, a hunter-gatherer people of northern Tanzania who still sleep much as our ancestors did, in the open, in groups, near fire. They fitted 33 adults with actigraphy wristbands that track movement and sleep, and they gathered roughly 220 person-hours of data across 20 days. The result is astonishing. Out of that entire stretch of nights, there were only about 18 minutes when all 33 people were asleep at the same time. 18 minutes. For more than 99% of the night, at least one person was awake. On average, at any given moment in the dark, around 8 people were awake or in the kind of light, wake-ready sleep from which a body snaps to full alertness in seconds. And here is the elegant part. Nobody organized this. It falls out of a simple fact about human bodies. We vary in our chronotype, in when we naturally feel sleepy and when we wake. Older adults, some in their 60s, tended to drift off early and wake before dawn. Younger adults stayed up late and slept in. Sampson has called it the grandmother clock. The elders, without meaning to, stand the most dangerous watch of all, the pre-dawn hours when a hunter is hungriest and the camp is coldest and stillest. Layer onto this the older human pattern of segmented sleep, the first sleep and second sleep documented by the historian Roger Kirch, a waking hour in the middle of the night that further fragments any window of total unconsciousness. Add that humans sleep remarkably little for a primate, around 7 hours against the 9 to 15 of many of our relatives, which Sampson frames as a social sleep strategy, short, efficient, and communal. Add the many eyes of a group, which detect a threat sooner and from more directions than any lone sleeper could. Put it together and a picture emerges of a camp that never really went dark in the way a predator required. The fire mutters. A child turns. The old woman shifts and coughs. Somewhere, always, an open pair of eyes. That flicker of light sleep in the elderly that we now treat as a medical nuisance may in fact be an ancient gift. The last shift of a watch that has run for hundreds of thousands of years. To the animal in the tree line, waiting for the single helpless moment, the terrible truth was simple. That moment never came. Number 2. Predators learned. We weren't worth the wound. A cave lion pauses at the tree line, one paw lifted, a pale scar raked across its shoulder. The camp glows 100 paces off, warm and close, and, to a hungry animal, tempting. And then the lion turns and melts back into the dark. To understand why, you have to climb inside the mind of a predator and do the cold arithmetic it does every night of its life. A large carnivore lives on a knife edge. Its whole existence depends on a body that works, and a single serious injury, a cracked tooth, a torn shoulder, a damaged eye, is not a wound to recover from. It is a death sentence, a slow starvation over the following weeks. Ecologists describe this with optimal foraging theory, the idea that a predator constantly weighs the energy it might gain against the risk and effort it must spend. By that math, a defended human group is the worst kind of target, high cost, low return, not worth it. Predators also learn, and they remember. They build lasting associations between a type of prey and the danger it carries. And humans, to a carnivore, are strange, novel prey with no ancient playbook. There is no deep coevolution telling a lion how a human band behaves, the way there is for zebra or antelope. What there is instead is a bipedal animal that stands tall and looks larger than it is, that holds your gaze rather than fleeing, and that, alarmingly, does not scatter. It clumps together and comes at you. Look at the real cases where predators do hunt people, and the pattern is telling. The man-eaters of history are usually the broken ones. The famous Tsavo lions of 1898, whose remains sit today in the Field Museum in Chicago, were studied in detail by the biologist Bruce Patterson and his colleagues. Their teeth and jaws showed disease and injury. An isotope analysis of their remains suggested one of them relied on soft food it could barely catch. In other words, hunting humans was a desperate last resort for a compromised animal, not the choice of a healthy hunter with easier options. There's a live debate here worth pausing on. Is a predator's avoidance of humans learned within its own lifetime or bred into it over generations? The honest answer is probably both. A bold lion that raids a camp and is injured or killed teaches every animal that witnesses it, and in social hunters like lions and spotted hyenas, that lesson can spread through a pride or a clan. And across generations, the bold individuals were the ones removed from the gene pool, leaving populations tilted toward wariness. Modern hunter-gatherers show just how lopsided this can become. The Hadza and the Maasai are known to walk up to a fresh lion kill in a tight group, shouting and simply take it, driving the lions off. Think about what that means. Even the great cats will yield ground to a coordinated band of humans rather than risk the fight, so every night, at the edge of the firelight, the verdict was re-earned. The predator did the sum, and the sum came out the same. The reward was one uncertain meal. The price could be everything. Restraint was not mercy. It was the only strategy that kept a predator alive. Number 3, the smell of smoke branded us the species that burns. Thin ribbons of gray smoke curl off the embers and drift across the sleeping camp. And downwind, a hyena lifts its nose into the air and flinches back. It has not seen a thing. It has smelled something older than fear, and it wants no part of it. For a nocturnal hunter, the nose leads the eyes, and the smell of wood smoke rewrote what a human being was. First, the deep history. Our control of fire runs far back into the human story. At Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa, burned bone and ashed plant material have been dated to roughly 1 million years ago in an analysis led by the scientist Francesco Berna in 2012. There are older hints still at Kubifore in Kenya around 1.5 million years ago, and clearer evidence at Gesher Benot Yaakov in Israel around 790,000 years ago. By about 400,000 years ago, regular hearths appear across the record at sites like Kasem Cave, fires kept and tended night after night. Now, the chemistry. Wood smoke is not a simple smell. It carries sharp aromatic compounds, guaiacol and syringol among them, that travel far on the night air and cling to everything they touch. And here is the crucial thing. Nearly every land animal carries a deep, hardwired aversion to smoke, because across almost every habitat on Earth, smoke means wildfire, and wildfire means death. That aversion is nearly universal, and our ancestors wore its trigger like a cloak. A human body soaked in smoke, wrapped in smoke-cured hides, sleeping in a camp saturated with the stuff, emits a scent signature no prey animal on the planet gives off. And scent is the first assessment a night hunter makes long before it can see. So consider what the predator's nose reports. Not the warm blood and grass smell of a meal. Something acrid, something wrong, something that the animal's own instincts scream is dangerous. The smoke even masks the ordinary body odors that would otherwise advertise a soft, sleeping mammal. It does not just fail to say prey. It actively says flee. A camp used again and again would build a lingering halo of scent around it, an invisible territorial marker announcing the fire-wielding species lives here. Soot worked into skin and hides carried the signature even when people walked away from the hearth. The biologist Richard Wrangham built a whole theory of human evolution, the cooking hypothesis, around what fire did to our diet and bodies. But one quiet side effect of all that nightly flame was this chemical brand, a smell that told the darkness to keep its distance. There is a fascinating possibility folded into this. Some researchers argue that fire, and the safety it brought, is exactly what allowed our ancestors to climb down out of the trees for good and sleep on the open ground, which in turn reshaped how deeply and how strangely humans sleep. The campfire that still keeps modern wildlife at bay is running the same program it ran 1 million years ago. Soaked in wood smoke, our sleeping ancestors stopped smelling like a meal. They started smelling like the one thing every animal is built to run from. Number 4. We slept above the reach of teeth. High in the fork of a great tree, a family lies curled in a woven nest of branches, and far below on the forest floor a leopard paces, looks up, and finds nothing it can reach. That vertical distance, that simple choice of where to lay the body down, is one of the oldest defenses in the human line, and it reaches back further than humanity itself. Our ape relatives all do it. Chimpanzees and orangutans build a fresh sleeping nest every single night, up off the ground, a behavior that is part comfort and part protection from the things that hunt at ground level. We inherited that instinct. Early hominins kept the bodies for it too. The curved finger bones and mobile shoulders of Australopithecines tell us they were still at home in the trees. The famous fossil Lucy, an Australopithecus afarensis, preserves anatomy that the scientist John Kappelman argued in 2016 reflects an arboreal life, and possibly a death from a fall out of one. The logic of height is brutally simple. Lift a sleeping body above the ground, and you lift it out of the strike range of the animals that ambush along the ground, the lions and the hyenas that cannot follow into a canopy fork. The one predator this does not fully solve is the leopard, which climbs and even hauls its kills into trees, and that single exception shaped a great deal of primate wariness. But against the larger, ground-bound hunters, elevation simply erased the attack. As our ancestors committed to life on the ground, they did not abandon the principle, they rebuilt it. Instead of a tree fork, they chose rock ledges, raised cave surfaces, recessed shelves in the stone. A predator trying to reach a sleeper on a ledge has to make an exposed, clumsy, noisy approach, and in doing so, it throws away the one thing an ambush cannot survive without, which is surprise. Height also buys the sleeper better sightlines and cleaner airflow, an earlier warning by eye and by nose. And our ancestors did not just find these places, they engineered them. At Border Cave in South Africa, the researcher Lynn Wadley and her colleagues found plant bedding laid deliberately on layers of ash around 200,000 years ago. At Sibidu Cave, layered bedding survives from about 77,000 years ago, and remarkably, it includes aromatic leaves with natural insect-repelling properties. These were made beds, chosen and constructed, the ground-dwelling echo of the ape's nightly nest. Every piece of this points the same way. A drier, elevated site sheds water and pools less scent, drawing fewer of the scavengers and insects that in turn draw larger predators. A ledge breaks the ground stalk that a big cat relies on to close the final distance. The persistent human unease in the dark, that primal sense that something might come from below, may be a behavioral fossil of exactly this danger. By putting height or rock beneath them and behind them, our ancestors deleted the geometry that an ambush needs and slept a little further out of reach of the teeth in the dark. Number 5. A sleeping camp. Read as one giant animal. Seen from above, in the last light of the fire, a dozen human beings are not a dozen separate targets. They are a single dark mass, bodies overlapping bodies, furs and limbs in slow collective breathing, and at the edge of the dark, 2 points of predator light hover, searching for an opening and finding no edge to bite. The simple act of sleeping in a heap is one of the most powerful anti-predator strategies in nature, and humans have always done it. Communal sleep is nearly universal among hunter-gatherers. People do not scatter across the landscape to sleep alone. They gather in tight clusters of kin around shared hearths. And the ecology of why that works is well understood, because it is the same math that protects a herd or a shoal. The first piece is the dilution effect. If a predator attacks, your personal odds of being the one taken drop as the group grows. In a cluster of many, any single sleeper is statistically safer than they would be alone. The second piece is collective detection, the many eyes and ears and noses of a group that notice a threat sooner and from every direction at once. The third is the shape of the cluster itself. Ambush hunters do not attack the middle of a herd. They cut out the straggler, the isolated animal at the edge. A dense mass of packed bodies offers no clean periphery to peel away, no lone target to isolate. The biologist William Hamilton described the deep reason for this in 1971 with what he called the selfish herd. Each individual, trying to reduce its own danger, moves toward the center of the group. And the collective result is a compact aggregation that is extremely hard to attack from any side. In a human camp, the most vulnerable, the infants, and the frail end up sleeping in the protected middle, in the safest position of all. Then, there is the illusion the cluster creates. A large, warm, breathing mass of overlapping bodies does not read to a predator as 10 small animals. It can read as one enormous organism, far larger than the hunter itself, and big cats and hyenas are deeply reluctant to attack anything that appears bigger than they are. The sound reinforces it, the snoring and shifting, and the low collective rhythm of many lungs, a continuous signal of a large, living, active presence. The scent reinforces it too, the concentrated smell of the whole group braided together with wood smoke into one unmistakable signal of the fire-wielding species, and the cluster has teeth of its own. Any attack on the pile does not wake one sleeper. It wakes the whole camp at once, converting a single target into a dozen roused, shouting, throwing defenders in an instant. Group mobbing, several humans advancing together, is a devastating deterrent, and proximity is what makes it possible. This is the same solution the animal kingdom reaches for again and again, from starling flocks to fish schools to musk oxen forming a ring. But in the human version, the aggregation is not just defense. It is warmth shared on a cold night. It is a safe center for the young, and it is a unified front against several kinds of hunter at once. By sleeping as one packed mass, our ancestors erased the lone, isolated target that the entire ambush strategy is built to exploit. The group did not look like prey. It looked like a beast. Number 6. Firestole, the night hunter's greatest weapon. At the very edge of the firelight, a big cat lowers its head and squints, its great luminous eyes suddenly useless, washed to blindness by the glare, and after a long moment it turns its face away and is gone. We usually think of fire as warmth or as cooking. But its oldest and most important job may have been this. Fire reached into the predator's own body and switched off its single greatest weapon. A nocturnal hunter owns the night because of its eyes. Behind the retina sits a mirror-like layer called the tapetum lucidum, which bounces incoming light back through the eye a second time, doubling the animal's ability to see in near total darkness. That is the decisive edge, the reason the dark belongs to the hunter and not to its prey. It is also the reason animal eyes flash back at you in the beam of a light. Now bring a fire into that world. Bright leaping flame floods the predator's dark adapted eyes and forces the pupil to clamp shut, and in that instant the exquisite night vision collapses. Worse, to attack the camp, the animal has to move toward the light, which means it loses its vision at the exact moment it most needs to judge distance and time the pounce. No careful hunter will make that trade. The firelight also throws a chaos of flickering, shifting shadows that break up the shapes of the sleepers and make any single target impossible to track. The whole relationship of the night inverts inside that circle of light. Out in the dark, the predator holds every advantage. But at the fire's edge, the humans can see and the hunter cannot, and its cover is stripped away. This is not theory alone. Ethnographic accounts from around the world describe the same thing again and again. A maintained fire holding lions and hyenas out at the rim of the light through the whole night. And fire layers on other deterrents too. The heat, the crackle and pop. And beneath it all that deep innate terror of flame that almost every animal carries. The anthropologists David Sampson and Charlie Nunn tie fire directly to how humans came to sleep. The protective glow of a tended fire, they argue, is part of what let our ancestors sleep more deeply and safely on the open ground, trading individual vigilance for the security of the flame. Firelight stretched the day, giving people hours after dark to work stone, mend tools, and talk, all behind a defended line of light. And a fire has to be fed, which means someone must wake to tend it, quietly reinforcing that sentinel watch we began with. Notice what kind of defense this is. The fire is a technology, not a body part. Its protection scales with fuel and skill and knowledge, not with the slow grind of anatomical evolution, so it could grow more effective in a single generation. The central hearths at sites like Kasem Cave show fire used this way, again and again, at the heart of a defended home. Smoke and light together formed a shield that worked on the predator's nose and its eyes at once. Fire did not simply warm the camp, it disarmed the hunter, and took back the night that the darkness had always owned. Number 7. The cave mouth was a funnel of death. From inside the cave, looking out through a narrow slot of moonlit stone, a hyena's silhouette appears at the entrance, hesitates, and does not come in. Behind it, the open night offers 100 ways to attack. In front of it, a single narrow gap, and beyond that gap, in the firelit dark, alert humans with spears in their hands. This is why caves and rock shelters appear over and over as human homes across the whole of the Old Stone Age. Their very shape is a weapon. Think about the geometry. In the open, a predator can circle, flank, and strike from any side, and from behind. A cave takes all of that away. A single narrow entrance forces the animal into one exposed, predictable path, and a wall of solid rock at the sleeper's backs means there is no rear attack, no blindside. The mouth of the cave becomes a choke point, and a choke point is a killing zone. 1 or 2 waking armed defenders can hold a gap that would let a predator overwhelm the same people scattered in the open. Now place a fire in that entrance, and the only way in becomes a lit, smoke-choked gauntlet that stacks every deterrent we have already met into a single doorway. The enclosure traps warmth and concentrates the smoke and the scent, thickening the invisible wall of signals that tells a predator to stay out. And a cave restricts the hunter's escape as much as its entry, which raises the animal's own risk and sharpens every reason it already has to turn away. None of this came free. Caves were contested ground. The same shelters that drew humans drew formidable rivals, the cave hyena, Crocuta spelaea, along with cave lions and cave bears, all of which denned in exactly these spaces. To occupy a cave was to win it and then hold it. Yet the archaeological record shows humans doing precisely that. At sites like Kibara and Amud in the Levant, long sequences of occupation with hearths built near the entrances, generation after generation choosing the defensible ground. The principle is so sound that humans carry it everywhere, even where there are no caves. Modern herding peoples build the boma, a thick ring of thorn brush around the camp with a single guarded gap. And it works for the same reason the cave mouth works. One narrow watched entrance turns an ambush into a suicidal bottleneck. Inside a cave, ledges and deeper chambers offered further fallback positions a large predator could not follow. And the stone itself amplified any intruder's sounds into an early warning. There's a straight line from this to everything that came after. The same funnel logic scales up over the millennia into palisades, gates, and city walls, humans endlessly rebuilding the single defended entrance at ever larger scale. But it began here, at the mouth of a cave, where a risk-averse predator faced with a narrow approach against an alert and waiting group did the only sensible thing. It stayed in the dark and let the sleepers sleep. Number 8. The first sentries had 4 legs. At the ragged edge of the camp where the firelight fails, a half-wild dog lifts its head, stiffens, and barks hard into the blackness, and behind it the sleeping humans begin to stir. Something is out there. None of the people heard it, or smelled it, or saw it, but the animal at the edge of their camp did. And in that bark is one of the most important alliances in the human story. We did not just defend ourselves against the night. We recruited another predator's senses to do it for us. The partnership with the dog runs deep, though its exact beginning is still debated. Genetic studies place the domestication of dogs from gray wolves somewhere between roughly 40,000 and 15,000 years ago. The Bonn Oberkassel dog from Germany, buried alongside humans around 14,000 years ago, is a widely accepted early domestic dog, and the burial itself speaks to a real bond. Earlier still, controversial protodog skulls from Predmosty in the Czech Republic have been dated to around 27,000 to 31,000 years ago by the researcher Miche Germonpré and colleagues, hints of an even older association. Whatever the timing, the value is obvious the moment you consider a dog's senses. Its hearing and its sense of smell vastly exceed our own, detecting an approaching carnivore long before any human could. A camp-following canid that barks at intruders is an automatic, tireless alarm, and an alarm is precisely the thing an ambush cannot survive. The whole strategy of the night hunter is surprise, and a dog erases surprise. The likely path to this alliance is what researchers call the commensal pathway. Wolves drawn to the refuse and scraps at the edges of human camps were tolerated if they were calm and useful, and over generations, the boldest and most alert of them, the ones that reacted to danger, effectively selected themselves into partnership. Even before anything we would call a domestic dog existed, semi-tame wolves loitering at the camp's rim would have reacted to and deterred other carnivores simply by being there. What the dog really does is push the defended perimeter of the camp outward, away from the vulnerable bodies and into the dark. Its bark serves two audiences at once. It wakes the humans, and it announces to the predator that it has been detected, that the element of surprise is gone, and that the camp is armed and roused. Modern hunter-gatherers and herders the world over still rely on dogs for exactly this nighttime warning, and the arrangement is a true partnership. The dog gained food, warmth, and safety. The humans gained a sentry with senses sharper than any of their own, and a warm body on a cold night besides. It is worth sitting with how remarkable this is. The dog is the first case of humans taking another predator's abilities and turning them to our own defense, and we valued the result enough to bury these animals with our dead. A pack of camp dogs is a coordinated, noisy, mobile wall of vigilance that few nocturnal hunters would ever choose to test. In allying with the wolf, our ancestors posted a watch that never tired and never blinked, and closed the last blind spot around the sleeping camp. Number 9. Even asleep, the camp could kill at a distance. A shape lunges out of the dark toward the sleepers, and a man, barely awake, comes up onto one knee and hurls a spear into it. That single motion, the ability to strike and wound from a distance, is something no ordinary prey animal on Earth possesses, and it changed everything about what it meant to attack a human camp. The evidence for how old this is keeps pushing back. The Schöningen spears from Germany, beautifully worked wooden throwing and thrusting weapons found among the butchered bones of horses, are around 300,000 to 337,000 years old, uncovered in an excavation led by the archaeologist Hartmut Thieme, and reported in 1997. The Clacton spear tip from England is older still, roughly 400,000 years, and hafted stone points, stone tips bound to wooden shafts appear by around 500,000 years ago here at Kathu Pan in South Africa, in work led by the researcher Jane Wilkins. Later would come the spear thrower and the bow, each multiplying the range and the force of what a human arm could deliver. That arm is itself a piece of the story. Humans are uniquely built to throw, hard and accurately. Our shoulders, torsos, and arms evolved to store and release elastic energy in a way no other animal can match, as the scientist Neil Roach and colleagues detailed in 2013. We are, anatomically, a throwing species. And that means even a startled sleeper snatching up a stone or a spear kept ready beside the bed can deliver a wound that ends a predator's hunting life. Return for a moment to that cold arithmetic in the predator's mind. Because a serious injury can be fatal to a wild carnivore, the mere possibility of being wounded is enough to deter an attack. Weapons kept at the sleeping site meant the defenders were armed the instant their eyes opened, collapsing the window of advantage the hunter needed. And crucially, ranged weapons invert the ambush itself. The animal that pounces can be struck before it lands, so the surprise attacker becomes the exposed one. A volley of thrown spears from several roused defenders is something almost no animal will face. This capability was cumulative in a way that anatomy never is. The fire-hardened points at Schöningen and Clacton showed deliberate engineering, weapons designed to penetrate. Kill sites across the Old Stone Age show humans bringing down animals far larger and more dangerous than any Night Stalker, and cut marks on the bones of carnivores themselves show that humans did in fact kill predators. Pair that reach with the alarms we have already met, the sentinels and the dogs, and you get both the warning and the means to answer it. An armed camp could hurt a predator from a distance even when caught half asleep, and that single fact turned every ambush into a gamble the animal was likely to lose. Number 10. The man-eaters that struck were hunted down by dawn. In the cold blue light before sunrise, a line of humans moves across open ground, spears over their shoulders, eyes down on a trail of paw prints pressed into the mud. They are not fleeing anything. They are following it. And this, in the end, may be the deepest reason of all that predators left sleeping humans alone. Strike the camp in the night, and by dawn, you would be the hunted one. Humans are cooperative, patient, and, when wronged, relentless. An attack on the group did not simply end when the predator slipped back into the dark. It could trigger organized pursuit, and by daylight, the entire relationship of the night reverses. Our ancestors had a weapon the dark could not give them, and it was not their teeth. It was their endurance. Persistence hunting, running, and tracking an animal to the point of collapse over long distances is documented among modern hunter-gatherers such as the San of the Kalahari. The scientists Dennis Bramble and Daniel Lieberman argued in 2004 that the human body is exquisitely built for exactly this, with sweat-cooling skin, long springy tendons, and a stable, tireless stride. So while the predator owns the darkness, the human owns the day through stamina, tracking skill, and cooperation. A band could follow a specific animal's spoor to the very place it lay up to rest and kill it. And killing the individual that attacked is a precise and powerful thing. It removes the one predator most likely to attack again. And across generations, this selective culling of bold, human-hunting animals leaves the surviving population tilted ever further toward wariness and avoidance. The historical man-eaters, the Tsavo lions, the leopards, and tigers of colonial India were in the end systematically tracked and destroyed by the very people they preyed upon. To feel the full weight of this reversal, you have to remember where we started. For most of our deep history, hominins were not the hunters. They were the hunted. The Taung child, a young Australopithecus africanus, carries damage to its skull that the paleoanthropologist Lee Berger reinterpreted as the work of a crowned eagle, talons driven into the eye sockets of a small hominin snatched from the ground. That is the baseline. That is what our ancestors climbed out of. The story of these 10 reasons is the story of a prey animal slowly, over 1 million years, becoming something a predator had learned to fear. Coordinated retaliation is a group-level deterrent, and it operated on the whole landscape. Fire could be carried to drive a predator from cover or smoke it out of its den. Knowledge of an animal's territory and habits, accumulated and shared across a community, made the pursuit efficient and sure. And even the largest carnivore cannot flee forever from a party of trackers that simply never quits the trail. The offensive capacity is what separates humans from ordinary prey, which can only ever run. We could answer. Over time, the very ground we walked became, for the carnivores that shared it, a landscape of fear, and they shifted their movements and their hours to avoid our range. Because striking a camp meant risking a pursuit that ended at dawn with a dead predator, restraint became the only strategy that let a hunter keep its life. Step back from the fire now, and look at the whole of it at once, because no single one of these reasons is the answer. The answer is that they stacked. Each defense covered the exact gap the last one left open, until a sleeping human camp became something no ambush could easily crack. The Sentinel Watch covered the moment, denying the predator its window of total helplessness. The predator's own risk arithmetic covered the motive, making the attempt rarely worth the wound. Smoke covered the nose and fire covered the eyes, jamming the two senses a night hunter depends on. Elevation in the cave mouth covered the geometry, stripping away the flanking approach and the blindside strike. Clustering covered the problem of the isolated target, turning many bodies into one beast. Dogs pushed the defended perimeter outward into the dark. Weapons covered the moment of contact, letting a half-woken camp wound from a distance, and retaliation covered the aftermath, making any attack a potential death sentence by dawn. See what kind of fortress this is. It is not built of claws, or size, or speed, the things our ancestors conspicuously lacked. It is built of behavior and technology, of vigilance and fire and cooperation and tools, and that is precisely why it works so well. An anatomical defense evolves at the crawling pace of biology. This defense was cumulative and cultural. It could improve within a single lifetime, scale with the size of the group and the skill of its toolmakers, and pass down through the shared knowledge of a people. Different layers answered different enemies, the cats and the hyenas and the canids and the scavengers, all at once. And it was redundant, in the way that all good defenses are. Lose one layer and the others still held. Let the fire burn low, and the dogs still watched, the sleepers still clustered, the spears still lay ready, the elders still stirred before dawn. That redundancy is why ambush of a sleeping group so rarely paid off, because there was almost never a night when every avenue was open at once. Cooperation is the thread running through every layer of it, the thing that makes vigilance and mobbing and tracking and shared fire possible in the first place. Our ancestors did not outmuscle the dark, they outthought it. Sleeping safely through a night full of hunters was, in its quiet way, one of the first great collective engineering feats of humankind. The predators are mostly gone now, at least from the places where most of us lay our heads. But the defenses did not leave with them. They are still here, folded into the way we sleep. Behavioral fossils you can read in your own nightly habits. Consider the light, easily broken sleep that comes with age, so often treated as nothing but a complaint. It looks a great deal like the last shift of the ancient watch, the elder waking before dawn to stand guard without ever knowing why. Consider the human pull toward biphasic and segmented sleep, the waking hour in the deep night that echoes a time when unconsciousness was fragmented for safety. Consider the fear of the dark that nearly every child knows, mapping cleanly onto the era when darkness truly did mean predators. Consider the jolt of the startle response, the flood of alertness the instant we are woken, an old reflex still primed for a threat that no longer comes. Look at how we still arrange our nights. We sleep better behind a locked door, the modern version of the defensible entrance. We are drawn to a nightlight or the glow of a screen, the faint descendant of the protective fire. Across most of the world and most of history, people have slept close together, communally, near warmth, exactly as the cluster demanded. And our sleep itself remains short and unusually rich in REM, the efficient, deep, dreaming sleep that only became possible once the camp was safe enough to fall that far under. The threat has faded, but the wiring remains. We inherited the vigilance without the danger that carved it, and it hums along quietly beneath every ordinary night. Understanding where it came from reframes something we take entirely for granted. A safe night's sleep is not a small or simple thing. It rests on a stack of defenses hundreds of thousands of years deep, on fire and stone and the wolf at the edge of the light, on the reasons a predator once decided we were not worth the wound. The dark used to belong to the hunters. Now mostly it belongs to us, and we sleep through it without even remembering the war that made it possible. If the deep past still has questions for you, there's another investigation waiting on your screen right now, and subscribing keeps them coming.